Hello, everybody. This is Sara Colata with Architecture Talk Tongue, and my guest today is Giulia De Mauro. Extremely happy to have Giulia and host her today at this podcast and talk a little bit about the fundamentals of scaling up your architecture practice. Topic super close to my heart as well, so super excited for that chat. Giulia, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Sarah, for the invite.
It's a pleasure. So Giulia, tell us a little bit about yourself and the business, and sort of the problems that you solve for architects.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of the ABD company, and we basically help architects to either start to expand and find projects nationally and internationally. So I'm very happy to be here and discuss this topic that is also close to my heart, because I think a lot of architects need to know how to scale up and how to find new clients and new projects.
Absolutely. So tell me, Giulia, maybe to start with, what led you to provide these kind of services? I understand you're also an architect.
Yeah. So when I started as an architect, I saw that there was, well, we were not taught business or marketing at university. And when I started working, I found out that even the biggest architecture practices did not necessarily know how to scale up, and were just trying to make it work. So my attention went to how to solve that problem in a practice. And throughout my experience, I started helping firms to find projects abroad and make it sustainable. So that's when I decided to start for myself and see if I could help more people at once. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's how it came to me. There is a huge gap, and I think there is more and more people see this problem and see that they have the skills to do it. And it's important now to find these people and to train them correctly in business and marketing so that they can help the industry to move forward.
Absolutely. So what would you say is like the three top issues that you find architects struggle with in respect of growth?
Issue is that when they start a practice, they usually have a first client. First issue that I see, like what happens after the first project. The second issue that I see is also, how do I build teams when people are starting to hire in an architecture practice? Who should I hire, and how should I manage that? Because that's also the difficult part. Three is, in my opinion, how can I find more clients on a constant base? Because a lot of architects do some business development, like maybe 1 month, and then they get a project, and then they stop business development until the end of the project, and then it's not a constant thing, right? So these are the three main issues that I regularly see people confronted with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting what you say, because I think that the general sort of mentality is to commit to your design work, and we're sort of taught to all the processes that entails. We know how to follow the flow of that sort of project delivery. But when it comes to like overlaying it as well with business development and marketing, which frankly should happen all year round, all the time, because you never know what sort of marketing strategy or campaign can bring you the next best client. I think that people really struggle to manage that. So what would be like the first advice that you would give in respect of for people that start the fundamental of growth? What should they think about in order to create a good foundation to grow a practice?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that you can be the best architect in the world, but if no one knows that you're doing that, then you're not going to get projects. So for me, the first think the problem that I'm trying to solve for the client, and how do I go about it in my own way to solve it, and communicate that through social media platforms, through the website, through speeches, or even pitching during events. And um, and the point is, if you make your discussion about the problem of the client connect with you much more, because a lot of times architects only talk about their references and their projects and the details of it, and a client is not an architect. They don't necessarily speak the same language. All they want to know is, how can you help me? So I think that step is to think like, okay, what kind of problem do I like to resolve? And it doesn't need to be if you, for instance, believe in sustainability, your added value is going to be they don't know where to start, for instance. So you need to make that message very clear so that people are able to contact you, and that you attract the right clients as well. You don't want to attract a client that doesn't care about sustainability, for instance. So it's not going to lead anywhere.
Of course.
So yeah, make the message clear and communicate it. I think that's the best way. How about you? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And I think that something that I didn't quite realize at the beginning of doing like my coaching with clients, but it came quite apparent later on as I got more and more clients, that I think people really find it hard to define what problems a client could have. Because, for example, you're in residential space, which is a lot of times where we start, right? We maybe get like a refurbishment on an apartment, or actually build like a extension. And, how do you define a problem, really? I mean, what am I, what is exactly the problem of a customer? And I think at the beginning, like when we were sort of talking, the big idea of this was relevant to me from a perspective of marketing. But when I started working with clients, it was apparent that people struggle to define that. Do you maybe from your experience have an advice of how to go about it to understand your customer better and understand really what are the key challenges that they face as they look for architects?
I think that the first step is really to ask yourself personally, what are your values? What do you truly believe in? Because the secret to a sustainable business is really to do something that you really like and that you really believe in. So the first step for me is to make a list of what you value in your life and in your work. And then through that, to think about, okay, skills that I have and the ambition that I have. And to even set up what age do they have, what kind of field, where can you find them, have a strategy to contact them, and to do a marketing strategy, so to put in place.
Mm-hmm. So basically, we could say, for example, that by understanding your customer better, you go through this process of knowing when is the moment for them to make a buying decision. And it might be, for example, when they start a family or grow their family or get freshly married or take a mortgage. So perhaps a way to solve problems is to understand the current scenario they're in and what sort of decisions they're impacted by as they go through a process of investing in a new build or an extension or whatever it is that requires your services, and address that, to communicate that with this highly targeted audience, so that they feel like your communication is relevant.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, that's true for housing and private. If you take real estate in general, you need to show that you can bring something extra onto the table, right? And even if you're a startup, you need to provide a value, and to use AI to solve some problems for a building, whether it is to use certain softwares or something. You need to really identify, like, okay, why am I different than the other person? Not better, but just different. And it's the same for housing. Like, what is your added value, and how can you understand a certain type of families, for instance, or you need to kind of clarify what you're suited best for. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So know yourself better, basically, in the process. Understand your own needs, and your own vision for how you want to run this business, what sort of projects you want to get involved with, and then follow that as a blueprint.
Yeah, that's super important, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, it's at the end of the day, it's kind of reflected back at the person in subject. A lot of times we're trying to find the answers outside of ourselves, and outside of what this business is, what the community needs. But I think going back to where you want to be is extremely important. Moving on from this, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the whole topic of growth, because when we talk about growth, it's one, obviously, communicating your unique value proposition and developing that relationship, telling your potential customers what you can do for them. But then there's this whole kind of aspect of sales, which is kind of considered a bit of a dirty word in architecture. And I know that it very much relates to also your work and what you help architects do. So what are like the key takeaways, if we were to talk about sales specifically in the architecture practice, that people should think about as they are planning for scaling and growing?
So for me, like the pitching structure that we use, the first step is to prepare the meeting, asking yourself, okay, what kind of client is it, and what kind of problem do they have, right? And then when you go to the meeting, you should be the person to ask questions actually to the client before you start even pitching, right? So like, okay, what kind of project are you looking to invest in? Why do you want to invest in this? What is the difficulty that you have at the moment? Can you not find an architect that you like, or is it that and you need someone to help you with that? Try to pinpoint, okay, what is your problem? And then from there, you need to show empathy and authority. So empathy, you understand his issue, and authority means tell him that you have seen this problem before and you have solved it for another client. Even if you have just started your practice, you probably have seen that problem during your time in a different company. So like, you have seen that problem, so you need to show authority through that. And then from there, you just give them maybe an example of a project that you have worked on before that had a similar issue. And then you give them an action plan. Okay, if we start working together, the first step is going to be that we discuss it together, and I do an initial sketch. And then, you break it down for them so that they really understand. And then the final keyword is, the final thing is take them to actions. You never want to leave a meeting without another meeting scheduled, or without them sending you the program, or there needs to be an action that the client needs to do to take things further. And I think you should never leave a meeting without setting up another meeting. That's also very important. So yeah, so that's for me the kind of the structure of pitching that I would say. The important thing is not to focus on your references, because a lot of their projects for hours, but we are not everybody's an architect, and that's the failure at university, is that they teach us to pitch our projects to other architects. So we tend to speak only the architect language, but very often to my client pitch, and I make them say, like, imagine I'm a child and you're pitching to me, like, what kind of words are you going to use, so that you simplify the vocabulary that you use.
Absolutely. I think that's a really, really good advice. And a lot of times I think in that at that moment also it's worth thinking about, maybe a potentially a similar project that you develop to a similar client, maybe with a family, and say how you enrich their life by the design decision you took back there. You know, maybe, you know, we made bigger windows in the kitchen to brighten up a space where they gather to eat, or talk about their experiences in the space and how that can change. And also refer back to topics that are relevant specifically to this case, rather than talking in general about past projects. I think it's very valuable advice, because we do have a tendency of spreading ourselves super thin in words when we describe our design solutions. But they're sometimes completely out of topic for architects, for sure. So also one more thing that I wanted to touch on in respect of generally growing, we have to always remember sort of the difference between lead generation and sales efforts. And I think that generally when we get into that, for us marketers, or people that are a bit more aware of marketing, we understand that it's a numbers game, and that you know, it's a little bit like with dating. You go on many dates, but you fall in love, you know, the few times where you feel really connected. And it's a little bit like that, giving yourself that possibility to filter through potential customers before you choose to work with one or two. Can you share some advice or some of your experience in respect of sort of working with companies, with architecture practices, and sort of to really emphasize the difference between lead generation and actually closing a sale, and how that is a journey of its own as well?
Yeah, I think that a lot of architects misunderstand what lead generation is and how much effort it takes in business development to trigger a sale. And my advice to that if you want 3 projects by the end of the year, how many people do I need to meet before I get one meeting? And then how many meetings do I get? And just like that, you can see how many lead generations, so how many people you need to connect. Yeah, if you have 12 months, you want the 3 projects, you need, I think, at least to have 10 hot leads to get 1 project. So that means that's 30 hot leads for 3 projects. And you probably get 1 hot lead out of, I don't know, 50 people that you meet. That gives you the right number of people that you need to meet, and you need to make these contacts, whether it is through social media, through LinkedIn, connecting with people and stuff, and make sure that you're there. And I think that a lot of architects don't understand this process in it. A lot of people think it's a waste of time to connect with this many people. You actually, in order to have a client, the client needs to see your brand at least 70 times before they actually buy. And before it was 1 to 7, now it's 1 to 70, because we're bombarded with things on LinkedIn and social media and networking events, are with thousands of people. So you need to be present, and you need to be up with people, because maybe a connection that you meet today is going to give you a project in 2 years' time.
Exactly.
You never know. So it's a chaos, but that's how business works.
Of course. And what would be an advice for people that perhaps haven't grown their teams sufficiently to have a marketing department? How does a smaller practice or a startup manage all of these different marketing efforts and responsibilities that are added to providing design work?
I think that either way, even if you have a marketing department, which is just a few companies that manage to have that, I think it should be a team effort. So like from the owner to the intern, everyone should be present on social media, but also to events. And just values of the company and how they can help.
Mhm.
And I think from the perspective of social media, one post every day about one of the problems that you solved for a client is sufficient enough to be visible throughout the day to your whole network, especially on LinkedIn or Facebook or whichever platform you decide to get. So giving value, tips for clients, or little problems that you solve for the client, and more than enough to be visible, I think. You don't need necessarily a whole marketing team to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That is in the company can help to that.
No, that's very true, and I think that one, obviously shared effort into localizing and focusing on 2 or 3 channels, marketing channels, and doing it well, rather than trying to do 16 things, marketing efforts at the same time, which I find a lot of people are. The moment they open the marketing book, they start implementing every single advice in the book, and that can also spread you thin. So I think, really localizing where your audience is, whether this would be in Instagram, and I think for architects, Instagram, Pinterest even works well. But LinkedIn is incredible because with Search Navigator, you can create a very well targeted audiences and frankly attract clients to the detail of their annual earnings or geography or position, etc. So that is definitely a great tool for architects to look into and develop as well. Well, Giulia, thank you so much. Tell us a little bit about your company and your services, and also where people can find you if they wanted to connect.
Sure. So, well, you can find me on LinkedIn at Giulia De Mauro. And yeah, if you need help to start your own business, or if you're already a company and you want to find projects abroad or nationally, we can help you. So if anybody has questions also about this topic, feel free to message me on LinkedIn.
Excellent. That's brilliant. So thank you so much for joining me and sharing your expertise with my audience. And
Thank you.
looking forward also to hear more from, well, basically just wanted to mention Giulia has a podcast. She's also very active on Clubhouse, guys. So if you wanted to find out a little bit more, she's got a bunch of educational efforts as well going on online, and you can follow these activities online and find more information on the website. So I'm looking forward to more content as well from you, Giulia. And thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for the invite, and thank you all for listening.